You're listening to KCXU LP 92.7 FM on your dial in San Jose, California.
Welcome to our one-hour weekly radio town hall series on COVID-19 pandemic with Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese from District 3. We'll introduce him shortly. First, a little housekeeping. I'd like to let you know that KCXU LP 92.7 FM radio is a nonprofit community radio station here in San Jose, California. And the station amplifies diverse voices and provides local opportunities to tell stories, share your experiences, and strengthen our connection to each other in our community. And I'm really excited to be a part of the program today. And our radio call letters are KCXU LP. And the initials LP refer to low power, which is why some of you may be listening to our broadcast on our website. We've been operational for a little over a year, but we're in our early stages and getting up and running and increasing our bandwidth and so on as the months go by. But the website we'd like to address you or like to have you go to today is KCXUCovid19.org. Once again, KCXUCovid19.org. If you go there and you click on live Radio Town Hall Live, you'll be able to experience the program. You'll be able to text us and call us and let us know what your concerns are. And anything to do with COVID-19, we're going to try our best to answer. And in any case, we want to welcome in our guest. First, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm sorry. It's Belinda Quesada. That's who I am. I'm going to be your host for today's Radio Town Hall meeting. I'm, of course, sheltering in place like all of you are, and I'm working at home. And believe it or not, this broadcast is coming to you from my home office in Almaden Valley, so it's pretty exciting for all of us. Listeners that are interested in hearing the live stream can, again, go to KCXUCovid19.org and click on Radio Town Hall Live. So please don't be shy about asking Supervisor Cortese your questions, and there are two ways to reach us, so I'm going to get into the details now. The phone that you can call us to give us your question is 408-634-8086, and the text message, which is a separate number, is 408-480-7833, and we have to do it that way because of the situation now. So we apologize for the two numbers, but if you go to KCXUCovid19.org, you can, again, see that information and be able to work through what's best for you to communicate with us. Okay, so a bit about our guest. We're very, very proud to have Supervisor Dave Cortese join us. By way of his professional background, he is he's a supervisor for District 3 for the Santa Clara County. And he's been serving on the board for over a decade, and he was a board president for 4 years. He's also served 8 years as a city councilman and 2 years as vice mayor of San Jose. He's been a trustee for the Eastside Union High School District for 8 years, and it has really dedicated his life to community service, and we appreciate him. He has an impressive record of public service. Welcome to the show, Supervisor Dave Cortese. Thank you for leading us in this town hall meeting tonight. And where should we begin to talk about the COVID-19?
Well, maybe first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I want to thank the station for accommodating these periodic town hall meetings. They're very important for people. People are gathering information wherever they can, of course.
Absolutely.
I think to some extent, these radio town halls are really creating an opportunity for people to listen in and get very fresh, very current updates. And today is a really good day for that because the new shelter orders just came out today. They will be effective May 4th. We were under shelter-in-place orders that were set to expire May 3rd. The public health official has certain criteria that we can talk about later, in terms of when we're going to kind of ratchet down instead of ratcheting up, when we're going to start easing up more in terms of shelter in place, or maybe just stop doing it altogether. But that wasn't yet. And in fact, Monday, the public health official, Sarah Cody, for the county of Santa Clara, who has sole authority on these matters, even separate from the Board of Supervisors, she announced, okay, we're going to have shelter in place until the end of May, through 31st. But she didn't indicate Monday whether it would be identical or different or what. And I think today that new information came forward, and I'll go through it right now. I do think it caused a little bit of confusion with some people. It caused upset or even, discouragement, because they thought, wow, that's it? I mean, you're just extending it for another month, basically, and you're not saying anything else. Where's the explanation? So I think what people didn't realize is in the fine print, she said, and on Wednesday, I will let you know, or, in a couple of days here, we're going to let you know what changes we're making, if any. And they were, of course, working on some changes. Some of those changes, I had some persuasive role in, mostly to do with construction, the construction industry, getting construction workers back out there. I was particularly worried about the residential side of it, given the homeless problem that we have, and the fact that residential construction usually means somebody's waiting to move into a house. Otherwise, it wouldn't be under construction. They're rarely under construction when there isn't a market for them or a need for them. And
true.
In this case, we have in the Bay Area as a region, we are about 600,000 residences or residential units behind the pace or behind the curve that we're supposed to be on. So it's another curve discussion. This time not flattening the curve, but really how far behind the curve are we in terms of where we need to be. And of course, that predated COVID. So we've been talking about, is there a way to start looking at risk with some work, with some occupations? And instead of, certainly you have to have a classification that's essential and non-essential, because essential would mean people who are frontline health workers and such, firefighters, first responders, etc. But how about also having a category that is risk versus, that is risk analysis, high risk versus very low risk? And how can you perhaps create low risk by working hard to put together additional rules and protocols in place for certain industries? And you can think, if you think through that, with construction, that could work. I think with things like dentistry, that could work. It's a well-regulated industry. It's medicine really, but it's well-regulated, and they could be even more careful about how they conduct themselves relative to COVID. So we'll talk about that. I think our faith-based organizations are struggling right now because they can't convene people, and they will be. I think that's another place where there's some flexibility. There are more than one way to convene worship, right? We've seen some of that. We've seen some innovation, but maybe there's a way to write some new rules to at least so that temporarily, until this vicious virus, dissipates, dies out at some point, or we get a vaccine. In the interim, how can we make some new rules about convening in some of these other areas? So here's what they announced today. The Public Health Department announced, as I said, the new order will go in effect technically at 11:59 p.m. Sunday, May 3rd, and it's going to remain in effect through 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, May 31st, unless the health officer amends or extends it. So technically, she has the power on any given day to, hold a news conference and say, I changed my mind. But unless you hear something different, this is what the law is now. Most of the prior orders restrictions will remain in place, Belinda. And I think that was the overwhelming message that came out Monday. As I said, that was met with some dismay. But however, the new order does make a number of significant changes. And let me just touch on those real quick.
Okay.
Under the new order, all construction projects can resume. That wasn't the case before. Provided
Supervisor Cortese, I'm sorry. Just to clarify for everyone, when you say new construction orders, that means that industry can go back to work?
Yes, provided that they comply with construction project safety protocols that were issued as part of today's order. So there were actually a couple of pages of rules, new rules, just for the construction industry that were put in place today that they are required to abide by under penalty of criminal law. If they want to open up a job site, then there's a whole bunch of things they have to do. Of course, they have to have PPEs. Mm-hmm. Everybody has to have personal protection equipment.
Okay.
Right, gloves. There has to be all the things that most people already know. Right, mask, sanitizer. Real soap and water stations that are always stocked up. They have to have a single gate to go through. No one who has any symptoms of anything are going to be allowed on a job site. There's oversight. There's inspectors that are COVID trained that are there to make sure that not only physical distancing occurs, but that inappropriate persons or unauthorized persons aren't, walking onto the site and contaminating people or bringing the contagion. And there's rules about shift work, how they need to break up the shifts so that you don't have plumbers and electricians and everyone all trying to work on the same, in the same area at the same time. These are just examples of some of the rules. And if you can imagine 2 pages of rules like that, that's what they're going to have to abide by if they want to reopen job sites. And we hope they will, but they've got to do it right.
Okay, right.
And let me say, it applies to, yes, all construction, commercial as well as residential.
Okay, right. Mm-hmm.
What was approved before, and I want to say this, Belinda, because it could be a matter of confusion. There's probably some people listening thinking, well, I've already seen construction. I've seen them working on the roads. I've seen them working in power lines.
True. You're right.
I've seen crews working on the roads doing tree trimming even. Well, those are all considered public works projects. If you've seen construction recently in this county, it was likely that it was a government job. Only government construction jobs were allowed to go forward until today. And the only other jobs that were allowed to go forward were residential communities that were being built at the low income, under low income guidelines. Mm-hmm. So everything else was banned, including offices, campus industrial, you name it. It was all banned, even regular market rate residential apartments or houses until today. And all of that opened up again, provided they comply with the construction project safety protocols that were issued. In addition, if you're tired of hearing about construction,
no, but it's a good start. And that's important because that's going to make a lot of families happy that have people in their family that are in construction, and of course, on the other hand, we do need the housing, and so it's essential. It is essential.
It is important.
Get them to go back to work. Yeah.
And so there were some other areas that were changes made, and I think another important thing, whether it's construction or some of these other areas, is the hopefulness. I think I was much happier today because I felt like the 2 million people that we represent here in the county, in Santa Clara County, as a board of supervisors, they got a little more hope today, right? They heard, changes are possible, things are changing, the rules can be changed, and I think that encourages people, and people have sacrificed so much already.
That's true.
I just want to make sure they have hope. So
it's very true.
Under the new order today, childcare establishments.
Oh, right. That's another big one. Yeah.
Summer camps. Schools and other educational recreational programs can operate to provide care and supervision for children to allow persons who are working in essential business or outdoor businesses or performing minimum basic operations to access childcare. So basically what they're saying is pretty much any kind of childcare establishment, whether it's a summer program, a school program, or they're part of the working community that's out there working right now.
Frontline, frontline responders.
It would free frontline responders. It would now be construction workers. I mean,
right. Okay.
Right now, it could be a child care provider that needs some child care for his or her own children, right?
Sure.
So anyone who's authorized to work under the orders is also triggers the ability for someone else to provide the child care for them. Mm-hmm. So those businesses can now move forward. All of these businesses, all of these operations, they have to comply with the restrictions in the order, which has to do with child care, for example. They have to be 12 or fewer children, in a cohort or in a facility. And there are other rules, of course, to make sure that the spread of COVID-19 is further contained. We don't. Last thing.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Let child care happen, or even let construction sites happen, and then have a whole bunch of children or construction workers start getting sick in clusters.
Right.
And then they go home and make more people sick. And this is, as I said, just a vicious virus. It's not like we're used to as parents. I have 4 children, thinking, okay, the kids went to school, they picked up something, they came home, and now I got a cold.
Right.
Maybe
right.
I got the flu.
Which is common, with kids.
Yeah, this is more contagious than a cold or flu.
Mm-hmm.
And it's harder to recognize, almost impossible in some people, because a lot of the carriers are without symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just people that look like they're having a great day and they're not having any problems at all. And lo and behold, they're carriers of the virus. And if you didn't distance from them, or if a child did not distance from them, or if a construction worker did not distance from them, they're going to get sick. And then what happens if they go home and see grandma and grandpa, or whatever we all call?
Yeah, right, right.
No,
right, other loved ones, yeah.
Sure. Other loved ones, but anyone right now that's getting into their 70s or 80s is a little more vulnerable, because usually they have some underlying weaknesses or asthma. It could be maybe they had a heart condition that's now been corrected, but maybe they're have a compromised immunity.
Right. Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this is where the virus becomes very lethal.
Right.
So the other thing is that they've allowed is outdoor businesses. Outdoor businesses, and they're defined here as to which ones are included. They're allowed to operate now, and people are allowed to visit them to perform work or to obtain goods, services, or supplies. So think of outdoor nurseries, for example. Those businesses can now open, and the workers can go there and, again, practice physical distancing and hygiene and everything when they're there.
Right.
But this is the idea here is that these are for outdoor businesses that normally operate primarily outdoors, even before shelter in place. So what I mean by that is nurseries and landscapers and agricultural operations, they were already outdoor businesses before. The reason they specified that, as I understand it, speaking to the attorney today, is because they didn't want people who now have indoor businesses to suddenly just convert them to outdoor businesses, and then you just have a massive problem, and then all of a sudden we have a big surge in COVID infections again. So they're basically grandfathering in those kind of businesses that traditionally have operated outdoors.
And it's right, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. It sounds like we're doing a slow rollout into what could possibly be the new way we're going to live in 2020 going forward.
There may be some of these changes that that we hold on to for a long time. I'll tell you,
Mm-hmm.
I may have mentioned it on one of the previous town halls, but because I'm on the Board of Supervisors, I actually have over 30 other assignments besides the Board of Supervisors. So I'm on the other agency boards and commissions, and most of those have meetings, and I have to go to those meetings because they have to have a quorum to do business. If I don't go,
Wow.
they might not be able to vote. So I have to go to all these things, and I'm fine with it. It's part of my work, and I like my work.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, two of the agencies are in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So people from all over the Bay Area, like me, who are elected officials, generally jump in their cars. Some of them get on public transportation,
Mm-hmm.
and they go to San Francisco for a meeting at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, usually on a Wednesday or a Friday. And we just do that. Like there's some reason we have to be there face to face. And when we're there, we talk very aggressively about how we want to combat climate change, for example, and how we want to reduce fossil fuels, and how so much of our greenhouse gas emissions are coming from vehicles. And, now we're doing those meetings all by Zoom. And I'm thinking, why were we doing that?
Right.
Why
Oh my
don't we just
goodness. Yeah.
Why don't we do the meetings like this and save all that pollution? It's more efficient, not to mention the time involved in commuting back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially, and it reduces congestion in general. Somebody else gets a shorter ride that day because we're not on the road. So
Right.
So that's just one example of many, many, many things that we may be rethinking in the future because we were forced into a different experience with COVID, and we're now seeing, maybe some of the ways we did things before weren't really that smart. They were almost just habitual, and
Right.
the world has allowed us to change. So, there's still social distancing protocols for business that are very specific. One good thing is that all residential moves are now allowed to proceed. We were getting lots and lots of constituent emails last few weeks from people who would say things like, my daughter is moving from San Diego. Is it okay if I go get her? Or how do we move from our old house to our new house if it's banned, if you're supposed to shelter in place? So that's been allowed now. Again, it's very, very much makes common sense. People need to be able to move from one residence to another or help their relatives move. And then there's certain recreational facilities that don't involve a lot of touching, recreational activities, not just facilities. Golf and tennis, for example, are traditionally sports. I don't play either well. I've played very limited of either of those sports. Baseball, I can play pretty well. I used to. But on golf, if you think about golf and tennis, there's physical distancing that's very natural. It's just part of the sport. You're not supposed to crowd somebody in those sports that's hitting the ball. And in tennis, there's actually a net between you. So some of those things, if you were to go to the website, which is SCCPHD, which stands for Public Health Department, .org, SCCPHD.org, you would see more detail on what recreational activities are allowed.
Perfect. Okay, good. Let me just interrupt you very quickly, Supervisor Cortese, just to give our station ID again and allow people to continue to send their questions in and or text. And you're listening to KCXU LP 92.7 FM. And if you want to join us, we're in conversation about the COVID-19 virus and pandemic. And in Santa Clara County, we have Supervisor Dave Cortese joining us for the hour from 6 to 7 p.m. It's a weekly series that we're very proud to be a part of, and we want to get to your questions next. So, Supervisor Cortese, so we spent the first almost half hour talking about some of the new changes today that Dr. Sarah Cody released or affirmed, and so can we get into some of the questions from people? Or
Yeah.
do you want to add anything to that before I move forward?
No, we pretty well covered all the major categories. And like I said, for those who want detail about recreation or other things, again, go to the website, sccphd.org. And
Okay.
yeah, we can go to questions now.
Great. Okay. And we can also put that, Manu, our engineer and engineer extraordinaire and founder CEO, he will put that up on our website. We'll have him do sccphd.org for our listeners to follow up with. And that was one of our questions, actually, like what resources or websites are available, or that you would recommend, rather, to our constituents, to our listeners, to let them know where they can get real-time information. So we'll go to that in just a few moments and talk more about that. But comparing San Jose to large cities that mirror ours, how are Silicon Valley residents doing overall, in your opinion? Because we don't hear too much about, the number of lost souls that we've had. And, every death is a sad one, and it impacts the family greatly. And with this, awful virus that we all have to be aware of, we, like you were saying earlier, we just don't know. It's sort of insidious that way. We don't know who's contagious and who isn't if they don't have symptoms, I'm saying. So how are we doing overall? That's a question that we'd like to know.
We're doing well overall, especially if you look at the original objectives 6 or 7 weeks ago when I shouldn't say we, because much like you, even though I'm a member of the Board of Supervisors, in an emergency situation, even the Board of Supervisors has to comply with what the public health officer says. And there's reasons for that. Obviously, if we had an earthquake or under attack, obviously this is a pandemic. Somebody who is focused on the health of the community and only that, is going to have broad, extraordinary powers. And that's what Sarah Cody has in this county, and that's what the other public health officers in the other counties have. That's the way California law is set up. In fact, she could even put forward a rule or a law that's more strict than what the governor has put out. And under California law, the more strict rule is the one that wins if there's a conflict. So extraordinary powers she has. And of course, she came out with first a rule that we couldn't congregate in groups larger than 1,000. You may remember that. And people were kind of justifiably freaked out about that. Well, what if we have a large event? How about sports? How about things like that? How about schools? How does that fit in? And then after just a few days, as the infections started to go up, as we started to be able to ramp up testing a little bit back in March, and other indicators like ICU beds in the hospital started getting taken up a lot more quickly, and the death count started to increase, she pretty quickly came back and said, let's reduce that number from 1,000 to 100. At that time, just before she went to 100, I sent a memo over to her saying, please consider reducing it from 1,000, because most of the banquets and things that we have in this county, fundraisers and such, are usually, maybe if they're large, they're 400, 500, 600 people in that range. And that would not be healthy, of course, to have a whole bunch of contagious people in a room like that. So this is what Sarah Cody has been doing. And the next step was Santa Clara County became the first county in the nation, not just the state, to do shelter in place. A couple days later, some Bay Area counties followed suit, as did the state of California. And so we have to judge everything by, at this point, I think, why did we do shelter in place, and how is that working, to get to your question. We did it. We did it because she said that this can spike, the infections can surge, the disease can surge so quickly in a population of 2 million people that our hospitals would be overwhelmed if we don't try to slow down the rate of infection. She didn't say we're going to stop people from getting infected. She just said, I want to slow it down so at least we can handle the flow of people coming into our medical systems. And then secondly, let's work on, trying to stop it. So, trying to get vaccines, testing people. Obviously, we wanted to ramp up testing, although that's been very, very challenging from the day one. So the thing we can't control testing very well because there has been a shortage all along of testing kits. There's no vaccine. There's no serology or immunity testing yet. And the tests that do occur, they were even delayed because initially commercial laboratories like LabCorp, Quest weren't even allowed to do those. But all the more reason I think she came out and said, while we're struggling to ramp up here and across the country, let's shelter in place. In other words, the old-fashioned way to make sure you don't catch something that somebody else has is to keep your distance. So I, Sarah Cody, am going to mandate that we keep our distance, not just at 1,000 or 100 or 10, but you need to stay in place unless you're an essential worker or unless you have essential activities, which includes groceries and pharmacy and things like that.
Right.
Has that work? Yes, because with only about 200 vacant hospital beds in the county when this first started, we could have easily eaten those up. And you look at New York, you look at Italy, you look at other places in the world where this has happened, even other states, besides the two I just mentioned, there have been way more per capita, per population, way more incidents of infection and hospital bed utilization and even deaths. So we've had a lot. We're fourth in the nation, in the state. So we're still experiencing a lot, but we're experiencing a lot less than had we done nothing. And that is the measure of success.
Yeah, and that's due to shelter in place and everyone's cooperation, just being good neighbors, wearing their masks, keeping social distancing and basically following the protocols. So yeah, that definitely is good news. And you talked a little bit about testing, and I know that's the first thing people ask about is, well, if expose it to anyone else, or I'm simply good and I can carry on. What do you say to that? I mean, it's a general source of frustration for people.
Yeah, it's been a source of frustration for everyone. And, to go back to what you're saying, thank goodness for the compassion and the harmonious way that our community here in Santa Clara County has responded to this. I mean, let's face it, there are some penalties if you don't comply, but I don't believe that's what's causing people to comply. I think this has largely been voluntary compliance by people, as you were just alluding to. They're being good neighbors. People want to be good neighbors. People don't want to infect someone else. People don't want somebody who is a senior or in an assisted living facility or an Alzheimer's clinic to unwittingly just lose their life because somebody was just reckless enough to go do something that they shouldn't be doing. And this is a great, that's really a little less specific, but one of the great indicators as well of how well we're doing. We haven't had the kind of pushback in this community that you've seen in other communities. Now, that's why I think today's order is so important, because people haven't been pushing back, but people are expecting some progress. And I think today they got to see some progress in action. There was kind of a reward for the hard work and sacrifice.
You're right. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's sort of a good payoff for being. I want to segue a little bit into. There's so many questions coming in. Oh my goodness. Okay, so some of them, elders in care, the health department report on COVID-19 statistics in long-term health care facilities and working care facilities. Can you give us a quick update? And then from there, I want to go to incarcerated individuals and what's being done about that. Can you talk about those two subjects, please?
Yes. In terms of what we call senior congregate facilities, any kind of facility where seniors are necessarily grouped up in the same residences, even the same daycare facilities, there have been problems. In this county, in Alameda County, and in some other places like San Francisco, we have seen where we have people in close proximity like that, especially if they're over 65 years old, and worse if they're older. Not only are we getting mass infections or clusters of infection, but people are losing their lives in pretty significant numbers. And that the county, what is the county doing about that? The county is put inspectors in those facilities, is really doing a rigorous job of trying to screen who's coming in and out, what activities they're doing, which of those facilities perhaps are not complying with the physical distancing rules. So the county's very much on top of it, but I suppose in retrospect, if the public health officials weren't so overwhelmed with so many things to do, they may have tried to mobilize people even earlier as a preventative measure into some of the, the nursing homes and senior facilities. So, but it does tell you something. We were just talking about the shelter-in-place work. Has it worked?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the indicators is to look at places where people haven't been sheltering in place, even in this county, in the right way, where people haven't been distancing, and you look at senior care facilities, and you realize when you go back and look at what happened there, people were not physically distancing, and look what happened, and that's why they're worried about letting us all congregate together. Because imagine if you started getting the acceleration of infections and deaths that we're seeing in some of these congregate senior facilities in society at large right now, we would be overwhelmed.
Well, it's also very sad that we can't be with our loved ones when we really want to. That's the other thing too, is that we have to maintain that distance for their safety and for ours. And that's just a very vulnerable population, and I really feel for them. So,
as to the jails, there's been a massive. The county runs the jails. Elmwood and the main jail down on Heading Street, and between the county board of supervisors, appropriating money, the sheriff doing her job of restructuring things there, and us, when I say investing, where we have more medical professionals in the jails than we've had in a long time, of course, because of this. And frankly, talk about new way of business, we should probably have more medical professionals in the jails permanently, because we inmates need that kind of help, mental health help, medical help, and so forth.
Definitely.
But there's been less jailing and prosecution of nonviolent offenders, so that the population of the jail are down, which allows more distancing, of course. And they're staying right on top of screening and testing where somebody has symptoms. They're quarantining those, doing a quarantine on those inmates and keeping them away from the other inmates to avoid, in a sense, a complete breakout in the jails. When I say breakout, I mean a pandemic breakout, and of course. But you have, in those kind of facilities, homeless encampments, senior congregate care facilities, and jails are all places that are very different, but they're all places that are very the same in one regard, very similar. They have people in very close proximity trying to live together under one roof, and who are not free, to just move to another place or use their freedom to protect themselves. They're stuck there, and that's where we've seen much higher rates of infection and loss of life than we've seen elsewhere in society.
Okay, and quickly give me do you have any current numbers on those loss of lives? Or just in general. Not to put a downer on everything, but just, we're such a large city, but I know that compared to other large cities, we're kind of doing okay in that regard. That we're taking care of our people, and you just don't hear that devastation or that devastating loss of life in the greater numbers like you do, say, in New York, which of course is not the exact same as Santa Clara County, but has a large population, urban population.
Yes. We are doing better, even just from a straight statistical standpoint, as I said earlier, on a per capita basis. I mean, for a community of 2 million people, you can't compare us with New York, apples to apples, so to speak, but you can say per capita, what is the percentage of our population versus the percentage of their population in ICU? What is the percentage of deaths? What is the percentage of infection or rate of infection? Those, on all those statistical indicators or categories, we are doing much better than our peer communities. But we still had, as of yesterday, we had 106. We had 106 deaths in the county. I did not yet get to this evening's figures at 5 o'clock when we started the show, but it's an educated guess, as much as I hate to say it, that number probably went up. It's been going up every day, and that's all the more reason why you kind of understand why the public health officer doesn't want to just completely relax shelter in place. He's already, even with shelter in place, even as good as we're doing, the numbers are still creeping up. So fortunately, slowly enough, that we do have enough respirators, we do have enough ICU beds, we do have enough hospital beds, because the pace of those infections, and really even the pace of the mortality rate is pretty slow. But 106 deaths, you can't compare this to homicide or other causation of death, is that's not really fair. But sometimes, we actually have constituents write once in a while, and they'll say, "What's wrong with you? Open business back up as usual. 106 deaths in a community of 2 million people is nothing." Well, we've only been at this since March. Of course, there were a couple early deaths, but the bulk of this has happened since March. In a matter of less than 2 months, 106 deaths, if you extrapolated that out over a year, multiply that times 6, we'd have 600 or 700 deaths. And again, I don't want to make comparisons, but if you had 28 or 29 homicides in this community over a year's time, people would be concerned.
Yeah, that's true.
Let alone 600 deaths from a pandemic.
Right.
So no, we're not getting thousands a day like New York, but these are still extremely significant numbers, and we still don't have a way to detect who and where and even what is carrying the virus, because it stays on surfaces and things. It is a compelling thought, I think, that to think about the fact that if you were in a room with 100 people, that based on statistical and medical analysis, based on the science, without any symptoms at all, 100 people without symptoms, that it is likely that there's 20 of them that are carrying the virus. So
no kidding.
Yeah, they're saying 1 out of 5, between 1 out of 4 and 1 out of 5 people are asymptomatic, but are still carrying the virus and are contagious. So now, you have to behave as if everyone's contagious around you. Otherwise, how would you know?
Okay, Supervisor Cortese, that's alarming, just to think about that. I mean, it's not, in its aggregate, like you said, it's anyway, my question is that just when you say 1 in 5, is that for this coronavirus in general, or you mean if someone could be symptomatic with any kind of a virus? That I guess you're just referring to coronavirus, right?
Yes, coronavirus.
In a room of 100, there'll be 20 people. Say,
yes, it's been estimated that 20% of the population has or will contract coronavirus. However, will not. A huge percentage of those will not ever show symptoms of any significance. And now even the CDC is saying, well, we've expanded, our criteria for symptoms. Originally it was, boy, watch out if you have a fever, a headache, and chills. and a sore throat. Now they're saying,
yes.
Now they're saying if you have a headache continuously and body aches, you could have the virus. Well,
right.
That gets a little more difficult to assess. They're also saying if that's what you have, this is right in, the public health department guidelines. Don't bother coming in for a test because, again, they're concerned about the system being overrun.
Right.
But
and
at the same time, they're saying you very well may have it. They're basically saying treat it like it's a cold, even though what you really have is coronavirus. And if it gets worse, by all means, call your doctor and come in.
Right, but they just don't want you going in for those symptoms if you can self-quarantine at home and take care of yourself there, which makes a lot of sense, so that you're not potentially spreading the virus. And I know people get panicky about it. We're going to take a station ID break right now, but I could talk to you for 2 hours about this, and I know people have lots of concerns about all kinds of things. Law enforcement, education, the rest of the questions for healthcare, et cetera. But you're listening to KCXU 92.7 on your FM dial, and we are. If you are not able to hear us, you can also go to our website, which is kcxucovid19.org. It's a website that we've created just for these forums that we're having with Supervisor Cortese, kcxucovid19.org. Click on Radio Town Hall Live, and you can join us. And you can join us if you want to call this number, 408-634-8086. Once again, that's 408-634-8086. Someone will answer, take your call, and then they'll send that to me. If you want to text, you can text a different number, which is 408-480-7833. Once again, 408-480-7833 for text messages only. Okay, Supervisor Cortese. Lilia has a question in North Bay, rather in the North County of San Jose. And she's asking about restaurants, when they're going to be open, and if she can have small groups at her house for dinner parties and that kind of thing. Can people shelter in place with a group of people that they know, or is that too early to do? And of course, restaurants, will life ever be the same? Will we be able to return to restaurant dining?
I suspect restaurants to normal. I also believe they eventually will. Breaking bread with other people socially is probably the oldest tradition of humankind. But it's not going to go away. We evolved that way. We're going to go back to it. But when we're this contagious, and when we have silent, contagious killers among us who don't even know that they're carrying,
true.
You just can't sit down in a banquet or at tables, and it's hurting restaurants. It's hurting a lot of folks who raise money for community-based organizations that use dinners and banquets as a way to raise money. And ultimately, it's going to hurt in a big way the cities and the county itself and the state government, because the taxes that are generated by those businesses are really a huge percentage, especially for our cities, as to what they use to pay for police and firefighters and everything else. So it's a big problem. She asked about
dinner parties or having having friends over that maybe that are not sick, but she wants to host a dinner party or just have friends over, play games, whatever they do.
No, you can't, and it's don't shoot the messenger here. It's not my rule, right. But the rule is because, remember, this virus started to move across the globe very, very quickly, but it also, during the time it was moving, it gave public health doctors, epidemiologists, an opportunity to look at what was happening in other places. And 80 to 85% of the infection clusters that were happening, even in Wuhan, China, and then in Italy, were happening in household family units. So where they would see 3 or 4 or 5 people, it would be in a family unit. And that was either introduced by someone coming over, to visit, or it was being exported because somebody came over to visit and then walked right into a contagious family and left and then went back to their own family. You see how that works? And now you have two families. So now you have 6 and 8 and 5 and 4. And they started looking at that and they're saying, these aren't just random people, all individuals off the street. These are all family clusters. So I think that's also sadly going to be an area where we're stuck doing, Zoom for a while. My wife Patty and I, we're Catholics, so we're Christians. We celebrate Easter, and every year we have everyone over the house for Easter, and this year we had to do it all online, all on Zoom. But at least we got to communicate with each other. And
what was that like? What was that like, having your Easter celebration on Zoom? You're very progressive. Look at you. That's great.
It was good and bad, right? It was wonderful. I mean, my parents, I'm so lucky, to have them. They're alive.
Oh,
my
you are.
dad's 87 and my mother's 84, but we can't go see them. My sisters drop off groceries for them and then ring the doorbell and run, because they're afraid they might be a carrier, and what if they give it to them, and they're more vulnerable than we are.
Sure.
So the good news is we got to hear some of my dad's stories. The bad news is we had to hear them, on a computer screen. So, what if, obviously, back when they had the Spanish flu or during World War II, when people were sort of self-quarantined, especially here on the West Coast, you wouldn't have had this technology to catch up with your family and your neighbors. So at least we have that.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's very true. And that was one of our questions, too, about technology. But, we're almost out of time, unfortunately. So we are going to see you next week, May 6th at 6 p.m. from 6 to 7. We're going to have another live radio town hall series for you, and we look forward to speaking to you about that. Let me ask you, Supervisor Cortese, any final words, anything that Santa Clara County residents should know about before we sign off? And of course, I'll ask you what's making you happy, because we want to end the podcast, or the show rather, on a positive note for those of us who are hanging in there and being positive thinkers. So final words to residents?
Thank you. We know that your patience is stretched. I know my patience is stretched. But those of us who are getting the information every minute, every day in government, those that you've elected that have the inside track on information like me, are here to tell you that it's really, really important that you hang in there a little bit longer. The public health officials will keep making changes. They will incrementally and gradually continue to respond and free us up in this virus. We will beat it, but we're proud. I couldn't be more proud of the people of Santa Clara County for their willingness, their neighborliness, the harmonious way in which they're approaching this, and the compassionate way they're approaching it. So this is just a big thank you to all the people out there that are saving lives, frankly, by doing what they're supposed to do. And what am I happy about? Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice, Supervisor Cortese. I just want to thank you for that, because you're very genuine, and I've enjoyed spending this time with you. I think you really are doing, God's work out there, and we appreciate it. I'm not just saying that for, political points or anything. I certainly am not running for office or anything, but as a neighbor, a neighbor to you and everyone else in the community, it is important to thank people for doing the hard work, because it is a stretch. It's a sacrifice. We have parents at home, with multiple kids, or even if they just have one and they're not in school and all that. So there's a whole host of things there. But before I forget real quick and we go into what's making us happy as our final end here, I talked earlier about resources, and you mentioned Santa Clara County Public Health Department as a resource. We'll put that up on our link at the KCXU COVID-19.org website. We'll do that. Is there anything else that we should be looking at in terms of resources that you can recommend for residents?
Well, this is kind of a simple one, but I want to give the number of my office. We are essential workers in my office,
Great.
including me. 408-299-5030. And the reason I said we're essential is because we will always have a couple people in the office, even if the rest are rotating on remote work protocol. We rotate 2 in every day. There's always people there to answer the phones. they can quickly answer your question or email you whatever link or information you need, or put you in touch directly with another human being that can help you. So please take advantage of that.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
And Supervisor Cortese, this is now if they're not in your District 3 supervisor for Santa Clara County, does it matter? Can your okay,
no,
great.
It doesn't matter.
And that number again is
408-299-5030. And frankly, if they decide they want to talk to someone in a different supervisorial office, we'll connect them there too. I mean,
right on. Okay.
They should use that number as a way to get connected, period. And we'll connect you. That's what we aim to do.
Right on. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So now we want to end the radio town hall program on a positive note. So Supervisor Cortese, what is personally making you happy this week?
You know, I have to say that I've had a greater opportunity, even as busy as we are, to feel connected to my own children. I mentioned earlier that I have 4 kids, and you know, the youngest one is, in my case, the youngest one is not a baby anymore. He's 20 years old, but was forced to come home from college because the college dorms are all shut down.
Oh, right.
And to see him and to get calls from my daughter that's out of state, my daughter that's out of town, you know, my son who's a school teacher who's doing distance learning with his kids.
Wonderful.
Just hearing from them, as I have almost every day, is really made me happy. So thank you for asking.
Oh yes, of course. Kids are our happiness, and that's a beautiful thing. Okay, so for me, what's making me happy is something totally not related to kids or my own daughter and my grandkids, but it's Amazon Prime series Bosch. It's been on for several years. I'm late to the party on it, but I love it. It's a Los Angeles police procedural show, and it just has a lot of heart. It takes place in Los Angeles. I'm on season 2, and I just discovered it over the weekend, and I thought, oh my God, I can't get enough of this. It's making me so happy. It's good writing, good acting, terrific ensemble cast, and it's just one of the ways that I shelter in place with a little smile on my face. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, you're welcome. All right, so Supervisor Dave Cortese, thank you for all your helpful information. We'll meet back here next Wednesday, the 4th of May at 6 p.m. for another live radio town hall program. And we also want to thank the members of your staff, Clara, Siri Krishnan, and Tabu Nguyen, for their contribution in helping us make this radio program happen. And our show could not have happened without the engineering support of our Chief Executive Officer and founder of KCXU Radio, Manu Martinez. Thank you, Manu. Shout out to Manu. And we also want to have you go to kcxucovid19.org for this transcript and podcast, and we're going to put the links up that Supervisor Cortese mentioned. So until then, we wish you all good health. Thank you for sheltering in place, for wearing your mask in public, and for being just great citizens as we move this extraordinary time in our history. Thanks again for listening. This is Belinda Quesada signing off at KCXU LP 92.7 FM.
Welcome to KCXU 92.7 FM on your dial, San Jose, California.